History holds secrets even modern science cannot crack. We are about to explore 25 of the world's most baffling ancient mysteries, from the construction of the pyramids to the fate of entire lost civilizations. These puzzles challenge everything we think we know about the past, promising a journey into the deepest unknown. By the end, you will possess a new perspective on the limits of human knowledge and the enduring power of the unexplained. What forgotten truth lies hidden behind a manuscript no one can read, or a city that vanished without a trace? What single ancient mystery makes you question the official story of our world? The sheer scale of the Great Pyramid of Giza defies belief even today. Consider the raw numbers: over 2 million stone blocks, each one weighing an average of 2.5 tons, with some of the largest granite slabs deep inside the structure weighing closer to 80 tons. That is the weight of a full-grown humpback whale, lifted and positioned with astonishing accuracy. How did a society without the wheel, iron tools, or pulleys achieve this? The stones were quarried from miles away, transported across the desert, and then raised to a height of nearly 500 feet. The precision is another layer of the mystery, with the pyramid's base being almost a perfect square, its sides aligned to the 4 cardinal directions with an error of less than a single degree. This was not just a pile of rocks, it was a machine built to last for millennia. Theories on how it was done have swirled for centuries. The most accepted idea involves a massive, sprawling ramp made of earth and brick, winding its way up the pyramid's side as it grew. Yet, the logistics of such a ramp are staggering, requiring as much material as the pyramid itself and creating an engineering nightmare for the final, steepest sections. Other suggestions include an internal spiral ramp or sophisticated lever systems that could walk the blocks upward step by step. The lack of any definitive evidence has, of course, fueled more speculative ideas, from a lost ancient technology to knowledge bestowed by visitors from beyond our world. Even the people who built the pyramid are a subject of intense debate. The old image of countless slaves whipped into submission has been largely overturned by archaeological discoveries. Worker settlements near the site suggest a rotating, highly skilled labor force of Egyptians who were well-fed, with rations of bread, beer, and fish. They possessed a level of societal organization that we are only beginning to comprehend. Modern engineers, with all our technology and machinery, still cannot agree on a single method for replicating this construction. The Great Pyramid stands not just as a tomb, but as a permanent question mark etched into the desert landscape, a silent challenge from the past. While the pyramids are a monument to engineering, another ancient site speaks a different, equally cryptic language of stone. Across the sea in the English countryside stands Stonehenge, a ring of towering megaliths that has captivated humanity for millennia. Its story is not one of a single grand construction, but of a project that evolved over more than 1,500 years, a span of time so vast it is difficult for us to truly grasp. The earliest version of the site was a simple circular earthwork built around 5,000 years ago. Centuries later, the first small bluestones were brought to the site, but the truly monumental phase came when the giant sarsen stones were erected. These are the iconic grey pillars and lintels we see today, each one weighing up to 50 tons, dragged from quarries over 20 miles away. Yet the effort to bring the smaller bluestones was arguably even more staggering. These stones, each weighing several tons, were transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of over 150 miles across rugged terrain. How did Neolithic people accomplish this? Did they haul them on rollers, carry them on rafts along rivers and the coast, or was the method something we have not yet considered? The sheer dedication required hints that this place held a significance we can only try to reconstruct from the silent stones. The true purpose of Stonehenge is the heart of the puzzle. The most compelling theory points to the heavens. The entire structure is meticulously aligned. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone and its rays shine into the center of the stone circle. This was clearly a sophisticated astronomical observatory, a stone calendar marking the longest and shortest days of the year, but was that its only function? Excavations have revealed a grimmer reality: the cremated remains of many individuals buried in and around the monument. This suggests it was also a sacred burial ground, perhaps for a ruling dynasty or powerful elite. Another theory proposes it was a place of healing, a Neolithic Lourdes where the blue stones from Wales were believed to possess magical, curative properties. People may have traveled for weeks, chipping off pieces of the sacred stone to take home as talismans. Recent archaeological surveys have dramatically widened the scope of the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed that Stonehenge was not alone. It was the centerpiece of a vast and complex ritual landscape, surrounded by hundreds of other burial mounds, processional pathways, and timber structures, some even predating the stone circle itself. This was not an isolated temple, but the heart of a thriving ceremonial complex, a spiritual hub for an entire region. So, was it an observatory, a cemetery, a hospital, or a church? The most likely answer is that it was all of these things and more, a multi-layered sacred space whose full meaning is lost to the winds of time, leaving us with a powerful, silent symbol of a world we struggle to understand. From the silent stones of ancient Britain, we sail into a legend written on water. The story of Atlantis begins not with an archaeologist's spade, but with the pen of the Greek philosopher Plato over 2,000 years ago. He described a formidable naval power, an island nation of immense wealth and advanced technology that existed 9,000 years before his own time. This was a utopian society that eventually became corrupt and arrogant, and as punishment, the gods caused the entire island to be swallowed by the sea in one terrible day and night of fire and earthquakes. Plato's account is incredibly detailed, speaking of concentric rings of land and water, magnificent palaces, and a vast plain. But was he recording a genuine historical catastrophe, or was he crafting a brilliant philosophical fable, a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris meant for his fellow Athenians? This single question has launched 1,000 searches and a century of debate. The hunt for a real location has taken explorers to every corner of the globe. One of the most compelling candidates lies in the Mediterranean on the island of Santorini. Around the year 1600 BC, a volcanic eruption of almost unimaginable force obliterated the sophisticated Minoan civilization on that island. The cataclysm was so vast it generated tsunamis that devastated Crete 70 miles away and plunged the region into a volcanic winter. Could this have been the kernel of truth that, after centuries of retelling, grew into the legend of a sunken continent? Other theories point firmly to the Atlantic Ocean, just as Plato described. Proponents suggest locations near the Azores, where underwater geological formations hint at a submerged landmass. Some have even looked to the icy silence of Antarctica, proposing that a sudden shift in the Earth's crust could have buried a temperate civilization under miles of ice. Yet for all the theories and all the technology, from sonar mapping to satellite imagery, no definitive proof has ever surfaced from the deep. The ocean floor has yielded no sprawling ruins, no sunken rings of stone that match Plato's precise description. This utter lack of physical evidence leads many scholars to conclude that Atlantis was never a real place at all, but a powerful myth, a literary device used by one of history's greatest minds to explore ideas of ideal societies and their inevitable fall. So we are left with a beautiful and haunting possibility. Atlantis may not be a place we can find on any map, but rather a ghost in our collective memory, a story born from the universal human fear of cataclysm and the loss of great things. It is the echo of a real disaster like the Minoan eruption, distorted and magnified by time, transformed into a permanent symbol of a world we can never recover. A ghost story written in a single word, Croatoan, marks one of America's earliest and most enduring mysteries. In the late 16th century, a group of over 100 English men, women, and children established a settlement on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England for desperately needed supplies, his return delayed for 3 long years by war with Spain. When he finally made it back to the island in the year 1590, he found the colony utterly abandoned. The houses were dismantled, the fort was deserted, and there was no sign of a struggle, no graves and no cross, the prearranged signal for distress. The only clue was that one word, Croatoan, carved into a wooden post and the letters CRO carved into a tree. The entire community had simply vanished into the wilderness. The leading theory, and the one hinted at by the carving, is that the colonists, facing starvation and isolation, split into smaller groups and were absorbed by the nearby Croatoan people, a Native American tribe who had been generally friendly. This was not an unheard of practice, and later English explorers reported hearing tales of gray-eyed natives and even encountering individuals who claimed descent from the lost settlers. Other explanations are far grimmer. Perhaps the colony was wiped out by disease, a silent killer that left no one to bury the dead. They could have been attacked by a hostile tribe, though the lack of any battle evidence makes this less likely. Another possibility is that they tried to build a ship and sail back to England themselves, only to be lost forever in the treacherous waters of the Atlantic. For centuries, the fate of the lost colony was pure speculation, a campfire tale. But modern science is now bringing new tools to this old puzzle. Archaeologists are carefully excavating sites on the North Carolina coast, searching for any artifact, any piece of European pottery or weapon that could be traced to the Roanoke group. Even more promising are genetic studies, as researchers work with potential descendant communities to find a DNA link that would definitively connect living people to those first English colonists. This is no longer just a historical whodunit. It is a search for the very roots of English America, a quest to solve a 400-year-old disappearance that lies at the heart of the nation's founding mythology. Another book holds secrets no one has been able to read for 500 years. The Voynich manuscript is a small, dense volume of about 240 vellum pages, filled from edge to edge with a flowing, unknown script. Not a single word of it has ever been definitively understood. Its text curls and dips in a hand that looks familiar, like Latin or Arabic, yet it belongs to no known language on earth. The writing is only half the mystery. The pages are crowded with bizarre, beautiful illustrations, paintings of plants that do not exist, with leaves and roots and flowers unlike any found in nature. There are diagrams of celestial spheres showing unfamiliar constellations and intricate drawings of tiny, naked women bathing in a system of green, interconnected pipes and pools. The entire book is a beautiful, maddening puzzle. We know it likely appeared in Europe during the early 15th century, based on the style of the art and carbon dating of the pages. It passed through the hands of alchemists and emperors, eventually landing in the library of a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich in 1912, who brought it to public attention. Today, it rests in a vault at Yale University, a silent challenge to the modern world. The greatest codebreakers of the 20th century, the very men and women who cracked enemy ciphers during the world wars, have thrown their minds at this book and failed. Advanced computer algorithms and artificial intelligence have analyzed its patterns, confirming the text has a complex, language-like structure, yet its meaning remains locked away. So what is it? One theory suggests it is an elaborate and expensive hoax crafted to fool a wealthy medieval patron. Perhaps the script is pure nonsense, carefully designed to look like a real language. Yet, the statistical patterns found in the text are incredibly complex, suggesting it is not random gibberish. Others believe it is a coded book of secrets, maybe a manual on alchemy or early science, written in cipher to protect dangerous knowledge. Another compelling idea is that it is a treatise on herbal medicine from a completely lost culture, its strange plants representing a botanical tradition that vanished without a trace. Some even look at the otherworldly illustrations and propose something more extraordinary, that it is a glimpse into a parallel reality or a message from a non-human intelligence. Every attempt at a solution only raises more questions, turning the manuscript into a mirror that reflects our own desire to find meaning in the unknown. It sits there, a tangible object from our past, reminding us that some stories are written in a language we have yet to learn. High on the arid plains of southern Peru, an entire gallery of giants lies sprawled across the desert floor. These are the Nazca lines, a collection of hundreds of immense geoglyphs etched into the dark, stony ground to reveal the lighter soil beneath. They form a menagerie of staggering scale, depicting a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with perfectly proportioned legs, a monkey with a curiously coiled tail, and a whale swimming through the dry sand. Some of these figures stretch for more than 600 feet, so vast that their forms can only be truly comprehended from high above in an aircraft. They were created by the Nazca culture, a people who flourished in this harsh environment from around 500 BCE to 500 CE. How did they achieve such precision without the ability to fly? The method was likely brilliantly simple. The Nazca artists could have first designed smaller-scale models of their figures. Using a system of ropes anchored to a central post, they could then trace the enormous outlines on the desert pavement, carefully removing the dark, oxidized surface stones to expose the creamy earth below. The region's unique climate, with its minimal wind and rain, has preserved these fragile artworks for 2,000 years. But the how is only a prelude to the far greater mystery of why. Why would a people invest such monumental effort into creating art they could never see in its full glory? One of the oldest theories suggests the lines were a massive astronomical calendar, with the shapes and long, straight lines pointing to celestial events like the solstice sunrise or specific star clusters. Another, more widely accepted idea connects them directly to the most precious resource in the desert, water. Many of the lines lead to ancient aquifers, and the animal figures may have represented deities or spirits believed to control rain and fertility. The geoglyphs could have been ritual pathways where priests and people walked in ceremonial processions to pray for life-giving water. Then there is the theory that has captured the popular imagination for decades, the idea that the flat, long runways were landing strips for ancient astronauts, and the animal figures were signals to gods from the stars. While mainstream archaeology dismisses this, it highlights the profound strangeness of the site, a strangeness that forces us to confront the Nazca worldview, one where the spiritual and the terrestrial were inextricably linked. The greatest threat to these ancient wonders is a modern one: erosion from illegal mining, off-road vehicles, and the slow creep of human development. Each scar on the landscape is a permanent erasure of a message we are still trying to read. The Nazca lines are not just pictures, they are a prayer made visible, a profound statement of faith etched into the earth by a people speaking to their gods, leaving behind a mystery that soars as high as the vantage point needed to see it. From the sprawling desert art of the Nazca, we find a mystery of a different scale, one of breathtaking miniature complexity. At the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, encrusted in 2,000 years of corrosion, lay a lump of bronze and wood that would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. This is the Antikythera mechanism, a device so advanced it seems to defy its own time. Recovered from a Roman shipwreck over a century ago, it was initially overlooked amidst statues and pottery. Only later did researchers realize they were holding a sophisticated astronomical calculator, an intricate clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden case no larger than a shoebox. This was not a simple calendar. By turning a hand crank, the user could predict the movements of the sun and moon, the positions of planets, and even the timing of lunar and solar eclipses. It modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, accounted for athletic games like the Olympics, and essentially functioned as a portable, mechanical universe. The engineering is staggering, with gears cut with a precision that would not be seen again until the rise of European clockwork in the 14th century. How did the ancient Greeks, without modern tools of measurement or metallurgy, conceive of and build such a device? The very existence of the mechanism suggests it was not a one-off miracle. It implies a whole school of thought, a tradition of advanced engineering and scientific inquiry that was far more developed than we ever imagined. Think of the minds that designed this, who understood celestial mechanics so deeply they could translate the cosmos into bronze gears. This was a level of technological achievement that simply vanishes from the historical record after this period. The knowledge was lost, perhaps in the fires of the Library of Alexandria or in the slow collapse of the ancient world, and humanity would have to reinvent it more than a millennium later. Modern X-ray and CT scanning technologies have peeled back the layers of time, revealing hidden inscriptions and gear trains that were invisible to the naked eye. These scans have allowed scientists to create working replicas, confirming the mechanism's purpose and its breathtaking accuracy. Yet for all we have learned, the Antikythera mechanism raises a profound and unsettling question. If this single, salvaged device represents the pinnacle of their knowledge, what other marvels of Greek science were created only to be lost forever at the bottom of the sea? It stands as a ghost in the machine of history, a whisper of a path not taken. A civilization that reached dazzling intellectual heights simply walked away from its own glory. Deep in the rainforests of Central America, the Maya built a world of towering pyramids, grand plazas, and populous cities, a civilization that mastered mathematics, developed a complex calendar system, and charted the stars with breathtaking accuracy. For centuries during what is called the Classic period, from around 250 to 900 CE, these city-states thrived. Places like Tikal, with its jungle-skirting temples, and Palenque, with its elegant architecture, were hubs of tens of thousands of people, humming with commerce, ceremony, and intellectual pursuit. Then, with a suddenness that still stuns historians, the lights went out. Between the 8th and 9th centuries, the great Maya cities of the southern lowlands were systematically abandoned. The stelae, the stone monuments recording the deeds of kings, stopped being carved. The grand construction projects ceased, the plazas fell silent, and the jungle began its long, patient work of reclaiming stone and memory. This was not a single event, but a rolling collapse, a wave of failure that swept across the civilization. So what could cause such a sophisticated society to disintegrate? The evidence points not to one cataclysm, but to a perfect storm of crises. Climate science has uncovered a chilling clue, a series of severe, multi-decade droughts that would have devastated the agricultural foundation of Maya society. In a region with no major rivers, the Maya relied entirely on seasonal rainfall, stored in intricate reservoir systems. A prolonged failure of the rains would have meant famine, thirst, and social chaos. At the same time, the Maya may have become victims of their own success. Their cities grew enormously, perhaps pushing the fragile rainforest environment beyond its limits. Widespread deforestation to clear land for agriculture and to make plaster for their buildings would have accelerated soil erosion and reduced rainfall, creating a vicious cycle of environmental degradation. This environmental stress was compounded by intense internal conflict. Inscriptions and archaeological evidence reveal that warfare between rival city-states became increasingly common and brutal near the end. This was not just ritualized combat, but total war, aimed at destroying opponents and capturing their populations. The political fabric, once held together by divine kings who guaranteed the favor of the gods, began to fray. When the rains failed and the crops withered, the people's faith in their rulers would have evaporated. The social contract broke, and people simply voted with their feet, leaving the stone cities to return to a simpler, more sustainable village life elsewhere. The mystery deepens because no single theory provides a complete answer. If it was just drought, why were some northern cities largely unaffected? If it was just war, why did no new power rise from the ashes? The collapse of the Maya stands as a haunting lesson in civilizational fragility, a reminder that even the most brilliant cultures are woven from threads that can all snap at once. The gears of the Antikythera mechanism point to a sophisticated world, but that world was not destined to last. Just a few centuries before its creation, the entire intricate network of Bronze Age civilizations around the eastern Mediterranean suffered a catastrophic and simultaneous collapse. Around the year 1200 BCE, the grand palaces of the Mycenaean Greeks were burned and abandoned. The powerful Hittite Empire in Anatolia vanished completely. The great trading city of Ugarit on the Syrian coast was violently destroyed and never reoccupied. It was as if a domino effect of chaos toppled every major power in the region within a single generation. The catalyst for this dark age, according to the only written records that survived, was a mysterious and terrifying force. The Egyptians called them the Sea Peoples. Inscriptions and reliefs on the walls of mortuary temples at Medinet, Habu tell a story of a desperate existential struggle. Pharaoh Ramesses III describes a coordinated invasion of these seaborne raiders, a confederation of different tribes moving with their families and possessions in ox-drawn carts, not just to raid but to settle. The Egyptian artwork depicts them with distinctive feathered headdresses and horned helmets, fighting from ships and from shore in a great, chaotic battle. Ramesses claims a decisive victory, saving Egypt from the fate that befell its neighbors, but the cost was immense. The world they had known was already gone. But who were these destroyers of civilizations? The Egyptians listed their names: the Peliset, the Shekelesh, the Denyon, and others. But these names are a map to places we cannot confidently find. Were the Peliset the Philistines who later settled on the coast of Canaan? Were the Shekelesh from Sicily and the Denyon from mainland Greece? The leading theory suggests the Sea Peoples were not a single ethnic group, but a confederation of displaced peoples, a perfect storm of migrants, refugees, and pirates from across the Aegean and Anatolia. They may have been a mix of Mycenaean Greeks, Luwians from western Turkey, and even groups from Sardinia and Italy, thrown into motion by a chain reaction of famine, earthquake, and internal rebellion. Their great invasion might have been a desperate migration, a push into the wealthy, stable states of the East after their own homelands had already crumbled. This raises the central debate that still divides historians. Were the Sea Peoples the cause of the Bronze Age collapse, or were they merely a symptom of it? It is entirely possible that the complex, interconnected system of Bronze Age kingdoms was already critically weakened by a series of severe, prolonged droughts that led to famine and civil unrest. Widespread earthquakes may have shattered cities and faith in divine rulers. The collapse of one key trading partner would have had a ripple effect, disrupting the flow of tin and copper needed to make bronze, the very lifeblood of their military and economy. In this fragile context, the arrival of the Sea Peoples could have been the final, decisive blow that pushed a teetering system into total ruin. They were both the spark and the wildfire, a consequence of systemic failure that then accelerated it beyond any hope of recovery. Their true identity remains one of history's great cold cases because they left no written records of their own. We only hear about them from the voices of their victims, carved in stone by the one civilization that managed to survive their onslaught. They are ghosts of a forgotten apocalypse, their names echoing through 3,000 years, a permanent reminder of how quickly a world can fall apart. While the Sea Peoples left only ghostly inscriptions, another ancient mystery stands in plain sight, a forest of silent stone sentinels. On the windswept coast of Brittany in France, the Karnak stones present a spectacle of staggering scale and profound ambiguity. Here, not one or two, but over 3,000 prehistoric standing stones are arranged in long, precise parallel rows that march across the landscape for kilometers. The largest of these alignments, the Menek Rose, consists of nearly 1,100 stones in 10 or 11 lines, stretching over a full kilometer in length. Walking among them is a disorienting experience, a feeling of moving through a grid built for giants, where the sheer repetition and order evoke a purpose both immense and utterly lost to us. These are not the towering trilithons of Stonehenge, but a different kind of monument, one of overwhelming quantity and geometric intent, a project that would have required the coordinated labor of generations. The central question is as straightforward as the rows themselves. Why are they here? One of the most persistent theories connects them to the cosmos. Some researchers propose that the alignments functioned as a colossal astronomical observatory, with specific stones or gaps marking the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key points in the year, like the solstices. The entire site could have been a complex calendar carved into the earth, allowing its builders to track time and seasons with a precision we can only partially reconstruct. Another, more speculative idea suggests the stones were part of an early seismic prediction system. The local granite is rich in quartz, a mineral that can generate electrical charges under pressure. It is theorized that the standing stones, acting like giant sensors, could have emitted low-level electrical fields before an earthquake, perhaps interpreted by the builders as spiritual warnings. The most human-centered explanation points toward ritual and remembrance. The alignments may have been a vast sacred precinct for ancestor worship, with each stone representing a lineage or a revered elder, creating a permanent connection between the living community and the spirits of the past. Alternatively, they could have served as stark territorial markers, a visible declaration of a tribe's control over this valuable coastal land, a message in stone that said, "We are here and this place is ours." Yet, solving this puzzle is frustrated by a fundamental obstacle. The stones themselves are incredibly difficult to date accurately. Unlike a settlement with organic remains for carbon dating, these are simply rocks placed in holes. The best estimates place their erection between 4,500 and 3,300 years ago, a span of over a millennium. This means the site was likely built and modified over countless generations, its purpose possibly evolving over time, shifting from an astronomical tool to a ritual space to a political statement. This long, fluid history is what makes the Karnak alignment so hauntingly similar to Stonehenge. Both are monuments that refuse to give up a single, simple answer. They stand as a testament to a world so different from our own, a time when humanity invested its greatest efforts not in texts or technology, but in the deliberate, backbreaking arrangement of stone, leaving behind a question in granite that the centuries have not been able to erase. A clay jar from ancient Mesopotamia holds a secret that seems to defy time itself. Discovered in the 1930s near Baghdad, this unassuming artifact, dating from the Parthian or Sassanid period around 2,000 years ago, looks like a simple storage vessel at first glance. But its contents tell a different story. Inside the clay jar, archaeologists found a copper cylinder, carefully sealed at the top with asphalt, and within that cylinder an iron rod. It was a peculiar arrangement, one that immediately sparked a modern debate. When a German researcher named Wilhelm Koenig studied the object, he proposed a radical idea. If this jar were filled with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or grape juice, the chemical reaction between the acidic electrolyte and the two different metals would create a small electrical charge. In essence, this humble pot could have been a primitive battery, a galvanic cell capable of producing just over 1 volt of electricity. The implications are staggering. Could an ancient civilization have understood the principles of electrochemistry 2 millennia before Volta invented the modern battery? The most compelling theory for its use is electroplating. A small electrical current, even just 1 volt, is sufficient to bond a layer of gold or silver onto the surface of another metal, like a statue or a piece of jewelry. This would explain the existence of exquisitely gilded artifacts from the same period, objects that seem to have a perfectly uniform, microscopically thin layer of precious metal, a feat difficult to achieve with simple mercury gliding. To test this, researchers have built numerous replicas of the Baghdad jar. When filled with an electrolyte like vinegar, these replicas do indeed produce a measurable, if weak, electric current. They work, yet for all the tantalizing possibilities, the evidence remains frustratingly circumstantial. No wires have ever been found that could connect such batteries into a more powerful series. No electroplated objects have been conclusively linked to the use of these devices, and no other artifacts like it have been discovered in a clear workshop context. This absence has led skeptics to propose a much more mundane purpose. Perhaps the jar was simply a secure storage container for valuable papyrus or parchment scrolls, with the iron rod and copper cylinder acting as protective, sealed housings. The asphalt seal would have kept out moisture and pests, preserving the sacred or important texts inside. So we are left with a device that functions as a battery, yet may never have been used as one. It is a ghost of a technology, a single piece of a puzzle for which we have lost the box. It forces us to ask a profound question. Was this an isolated, accidental discovery, a spark of genius that flickered and died without spreading? Or does it hint at a forgotten branch of ancient science, a practical knowledge of electricity that was used for ritual or craft, only to be lost in the sands, leaving behind a single, silent vessel that holds more questions than it ever did vinegar? A sandstorm can erase a man in minutes, but an entire army of 50,000 soldiers simply vanishing without a trace is a different kind of oblivion. The story comes to us from the Greek historian Herodotus, a man who collected tales as much as facts. He wrote that around 524 BCE, the Persian emperor Cambyses II, in a fit of rage after being denied legitimacy by the priests at the Oracle of Ammon in the Siwa oasis, dispatched a massive force to march across the desert and destroy the sacred temple. These were not just any troops, but the formidable warriors of the Persian Empire, the most powerful military machine of its age. According to the account, the army set out from the Nile Valley, heading into the vast and trackless western desert of Egypt. They made it about halfway to the oasis when a monstrous sandstorm, a roiling wall of wind and grit known as a khamsin, descended upon them. When the skies finally cleared, the entire force was gone, buried beneath the dunes, leaving no survivors to tell the tale. For centuries, this was treated as one of Herodotus's more colorful fables, a dramatic legend to illustrate the hubris of a king and the power of the gods. But is it possible that a story from 2,500 years ago holds a kernel of geological truth? The search for the lost army has become a modern obsession, a real-life treasure hunt in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Expeditions led by archaeologists and adventurers have scoured the likely routes from the Nile to Siwa, using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery to scan beneath the shifting sands. Their efforts have yielded tantalizing, if controversial, clues. One team announced the discovery of a potential mass grave site, a rocky outcrop littered with ancient weapons, fragments of bronze and iron, and what appeared to be human bones. They argued this could be the remnants of a small contingent, perhaps a scouting party that fell victim to an ambush or the elements. Others have found Persian daggers and arrowheads in the region, artifacts that seem out of place in the Egyptian desert. Yet for every promising lead, there is a wave of skepticism. No definitive proof has ever surfaced, no sprawling battlefield with the remains of thousands, no regimental insignia or royal seals that can be conclusively linked to Cambyses's doomed expedition. The artifacts discovered could have come from later periods or from smaller, isolated trade caravans that met a similar fate. The desert is a master of concealment, and a single, catastrophic sandstorm could indeed have buried an army so completely that nothing would ever surface again. So was it a historical event or a pure legend? The most compelling answer lies in the middle. it is highly probable that a significant Persian force was sent toward Siwa and that it met with disaster in the desert. The scale of 50,000 may be an epic exaggeration, but the loss of even 5,000 elite troops would have been a catastrophic military and political blow for Cambyses, one he would have wanted to conceal. The story, distorted by time and retelling, became a perfect storm of fact and myth. Finding the lost army would be more than just a dramatic discovery. It would be a window into the reality of ancient Persian logistics, weaponry, and the brutal challenges of desert warfare. It would confirm one of history's great campfire stories as a true tragedy, a moment when the immense power of an empire was humbled not by a rival army, but by the indifferent, overwhelming force of nature itself. The desert keeps its secrets well, and the sands over Siwa remain a silent, golden shroud. Among the fragile parchment of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one document stands utterly apart, not for its spiritual wisdom but for its material greed. This is the Copper Scroll, and it is not made of parchment or papyrus, but of thin, corroded metal. While the other scrolls contain biblical texts and community rules, this one reads like a frantic treasurer's ledger, a list of 64 locations where unimaginable wealth is supposedly buried. Its language is stark and cryptic, detailing caches of gold, silver, coins, and precious perfumes, with quantities so vast the total value has been estimated in the billions of dollars today. The instructions are maddeningly vague, pointing to ruins, dams, and specific gutters, describing distances in ancient measurements that no longer correspond to our landscape. One entry might direct you to a certain cistern, another to a sepulchral monument, each clue a piece of a puzzle whose map has been lost. The central debate is whether this is a genuine inventory or an elaborate fantasy. The most compelling theory posits that this is the real deal, a record of the Second Temple's sacred treasury, hidden by priests in the chaotic years before the Romans sacked Jerusalem in 70 CE. They would have had both the motive and the means to safeguard their holiest relics and vast wealth from the invading legions, encoding the locations in copper to ensure the record would survive where parchment would rot. The sheer, meticulous detail of the list, with precise weights and specific items, argues strongly for its authenticity. Yet, skeptics point out that not a single item from the scroll has ever been recovered despite a century of searching. This has led to the counter-theory that the scroll is a work of pure fiction, perhaps a piece of folklore, a legend about hidden treasure written down to give it a veneer of truth, or even an elaborate hoax. The very medium of copper is part of the mystery, as it was an expensive and difficult material to inscribe, suggesting the message was meant to last for eternity. This durability has fueled countless expeditions, from amateur treasure hunters to serious archaeologists, all armed with shovels, metal detectors, and crumbling translations. They have dug at the base of ancient walls, scanned dry riverbeds, and investigated long collapsed aqueducts, following directions that seem to lead nowhere. The greatest obstacle is time itself. The landmarks mentioned, like the River of the Dome or the Staircase of the Refuse, have either vanished completely or their names have been lost to history. The terrain has been reshaped by earthquakes, floods, and 2,000 years of human construction. A treasure that was buried in a crack in a rock face could now be deep underground, or its hiding place could have been obliterated by a modern road. The Copper Scroll remains a paradox, a document that feels too specific to be a lie, yet too elusive to be proven true. It is a ghost of a fortune, a tangible recipe for wealth that has, so far, led only to empty holes and deepened the legend, ensuring that the dream of discovering a lost biblical treasure remains powerfully, tantalizingly alive. A map drawn in 1513 seems to depict a continent humanity would not officially discover for another 300 years. The Piri Reis map, a fragment of a larger world chart compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, is drawn on gazelle skin and rich with detail. It shows the coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the newly discovered lands of the Americas with surprising accuracy, but its most baffling feature lies at the bottom. A landmass is shown connected to South America, with coastlines and inlets that bear a startling resemblance to the continent of Antarctica, and most incredibly, it is depicted without its massive, mile-thick ice cap. This is a geological impossibility according to modern science. The last time Antarctica was free of ice was millions of years ago, long before any known human civilization existed. So what are we actually looking at? The most accepted scholarly explanation is that this southern land is not Antarctica at all, but a distorted, composite representation of the eastern coast of South America. Early explorers often connected new discoveries to mythical southern continents, and the map could be blending real cartographic data with pure speculation. Piri Reis himself wrote notes on the map, stating he had used many source charts, including what he called a map from the time of Alexander the Great, and even one used by Christopher Columbus. This suggests he was piecing together knowledge from diverse and sometimes ancient sources. This is where the mystery truly ignites. If the southern land is indeed Antarctica, it implies that the admiral had access to source maps drawn by an incredibly advanced, unknown seafaring culture. Proponents of this theory argue that the coastline matches subglacial surveys of Queen Maud Land, the part of Antarctica that would have been closest to South America. They propose that a prehistoric civilization with sophisticated nautical technology mapped the world, including an ice-free Antarctica, and that fragments of this knowledge survived, eventually finding their way into the hands of a Turkish admiral. The controversy is a perfect storm of cartography and speculation. Skeptics point out that the map contains serious errors and omissions, and that fitting a small, fragmented parchment to a modern map of a frozen continent involves a lot of selective interpretation. The landmass could just as easily be a fanciful extension of Patagonia, a placeholder for the great unknown southern land that geographers had theorized must exist to balance the northern continents. The map forces us to confront a profound question about the transmission of knowledge. Was Piri Reis the beneficiary of a lost cartographic tradition, a thread of information that bypassed mainstream history? Or is his map a brilliant but flawed synthesis of the best and worst geographical guesses of his era? It remains a cartographic ghost, a tantalizing piece of evidence that either reveals a profound truth about our past or simply holds a mirror to our deep desire to find lost worlds in the lines of an ancient chart. While maps hint at lost worlds, the stones of Death Valley write their own strange stories directly upon the earth. On the perfectly flat, cracked mud of a place called Racetrack Playa, a truly bizarre phenomenon occurs. Rocks, some as heavy as 700 pounds, appear to move on their own, sliding across the dry lake bed and leaving long, meandering trails etched into its surface. These are not simple drag marks, but elegant, sometimes sharply turning grooves that can stretch for hundreds of feet, as if the stones were dancing a slow, silent ballet in the emptiness. For over a century, this was one of nature's greatest passive mysteries. No one had ever seen them move. Visitors would arrive to find the trails freshly cut, the performers having finished their act in secret. The utter lack of witnesses fueled every kind of speculation. Could it be the work of powerful, localized dust devils whipping the rocks along? Perhaps the answer lay in the earth itself, with strange magnetic forces pulling the stones across the flat ground. Some even suspected elaborate pranks, a decades-long hoax played by patient tricksters in the vast, empty desert. The most poetic theory involved a perfect partnership of ice and wind. The idea was that on rare winter nights, a thin sheet of ice would form on the playa. When the sun rose, melting the ice just enough, a strong gust of wind could catch the floating sheets and push the embedded rocks along like tiny, rocky sailboats on a temporary sea. It was a beautiful idea, but for a long time it remained just that, an unproven hypothesis. Then, in the 2010s, a team of scientists cracked the case wide open by using simple, clever technology. They placed GPS units on several rocks and set up time-lapse cameras around the playa. They waited, and finally, in the winter of 2013, they captured the event. The mystery was solved, but the reality was no less magical. The movement requires a very specific and rare sequence of events. First, the playa must flood with a thin layer of water from a rare desert rain. Then, on a cold, clear night, that water must freeze into a large, thin sheet of windowpane ice, perhaps only a quarter of an inch thick. The next day, as the sun warms the ice, it begins to break up into massive floating panels. Now comes the final ingredient, a steady, gentle wind. This wind, pushing against these vast, floating sheets of ice, exerts just enough force on the rocks trapped within them to set them in motion. The ice panels, sometimes dozens of feet across, shove the heavy stones along at a leisurely pace, a slow-motion shove that carves those elegant trails into the soft mud below. So the case is closed, right? Not entirely. While the ice sail theory perfectly explains the movement of most of the sailing stones, a few lingering questions still drift across the playa. The largest stones, those 700-pound behemoths, would require an immense sheet of ice and a sustained wind to get them going, conditions that seem to push the limits of the observed phenomenon. Furthermore, the precise physics of how the ice grips and transfers force to such heavy, irregularly shaped rocks is not fully modeled. Why do some stones move in perfect parallel while others wander off on their own? Why do some seasons see a frenzy of activity while others leave the playa completely still? The sailing stones remind us that even when a mystery is largely solved, nature always holds back a few secrets, leaving us with a subtle, beautiful reminder that not everything needs a final answer. Far from the shifting sands of Death Valley, another desert held bodies preserved so perfectly they seem to defy the passage of millennia. In the barren Tarim Basin of western China, archaeologists made a startling discovery, unearthing mummies dating back as far as 1800 BCE. Their preservation in the dry, salty earth was remarkable, but it was their appearance that sent a shockwave through the historical community. These individuals were tall, with long noses, deep-set eyes, and hair that was distinctly red, blonde, or light brown. They were dressed in finely woven woolen textiles, their clothes featuring patterns and plaid designs that looked like they belonged in prehistoric Europe, not in the heart of Asia. Here were people who looked like they had walked straight out of a Nordic forest, yet they had been buried in the sands of what is now China, thousands of years before the Silk Road was ever conceived. For decades, their origin was pure speculation, a visual puzzle. Were they wandering traders, a lost legion of mercenaries, or the remnants of a forgotten migration? The answer finally came from modern genetics. DNA analysis confirmed what their features so strongly suggested. These people were not East Asian. They were almost entirely of Western Eurasian descent, their ancestors originating from the steppes of what is now Ukraine and southern Russia. This genetic proof unlocked one mystery only to reveal a deeper, more profound one. How and why did a community of Westerners traverse such vast and formidable distances to settle in this isolated Chinese desert so long ago? Their journey would have been an epic saga of survival, taking them across towering mountain ranges and barren steppes. They were not just casual visitors either. The evidence suggests they lived in the Tarim Basin for centuries, building a stable society. Their grave goods tell a story of a mixed economy with cattle, sheep, and goats, but also wheat and millet, showing they were both herders and farmers. They lived alongside other, distinctly East Asian populations, yet their burial customs, their clothing, and their genetics remained strikingly distinct for generations. This forces a complete rethinking of ancient history. We often imagine the ancient world as a series of isolated cultures, but the Tarim mummies are undeniable proof of incredibly early long-distance contact. They were a pocket of the West in the East, a living bridge between worlds that were not supposed to have met for another 2,000 years. Their very existence rewrites the narrative of human migration, showing that the currents of people and ideas flowed across Eurasia much earlier and much more freely than we ever believed. Who were these bold pioneers, and what stories of their epic journey died with them? They lie in silence, a community of strangers in a strange land, their presence a permanent challenge to our maps of the ancient world. These walls are a puzzle of stone that seems to defy physics itself. High in the Andes, overlooking the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman stands as a testament to a lost engineering genius. Its most famous feature is not a towering structure, but the sheer, mind-bending perfection of its foundations. The walls are built from colossal limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, each one a unique, irregular polygon with as many as 12 different sides. Yet these gigantic puzzle pieces are fitted together with a precision that stops the breath. The joints are so seamless, so impossibly tight, that you cannot force a single piece of paper or even the blade of a razor between the stones. This is polygonal masonry at its most advanced, a stonecraft so perfect it has survived centuries of violent earthquakes that have toppled the Spanish colonial buildings constructed on top of it. How did the Inca, a culture without the wheel, without iron chisels, and without mortar, achieve this? The most enduring theory involves a process of trial and error that is almost unimaginable in its patience. Stonemasons would have painstakingly shaped a block, then lowered it into place to check the fit. They would then lift it again, grind down a high spot, and repeat the process over and over, perhaps hundreds of times for a single stone. This would have required an immense, organized labor force and a profound understanding of stone's properties, but could sheer persistence alone account for such flawless results? Another, more speculative idea suggests the Inca possessed a lost technique for softening stone. Some researchers point to local plants with high acidic content, theorizing that a paste made from these plants could have been applied to the rock surface, making it pliable enough to mold and shape like clay. This could explain the flowing, almost organic way the stones seem to melt into one another. Others propose sophisticated lever and pivot systems, using logs, ropes, and gravel ramps to maneuver the massive blocks with a delicate, incremental control. The true secret may lie in a world completely different from our own. For the Inca, stone was a living substance imbued with a spirit. The act of construction was not a conquest over nature, but a conversation with it. The stonemasons may have been seeking the perfect fit, not through brute force, but by listening to the stone, by understanding its unique shape and finding its complementary partner in the wall. This spiritual connection to their material might have fostered a level of craftsmanship we can no longer fully comprehend. The result is a structure that is not just strong, but intelligent. The interlocking jigsaw puzzle design and the slight inward tilt of the walls make them incredibly resilient to seismic activity. When an earthquake strikes, the stones in a Sacsayhuaman wall do not crack and crumble. Instead, they dance, they shift and settle against each other, absorbing the energy, and then, when the shaking stops, they simply lock back into place. It is architecture that breathes with the earth, a silent dialogue between human ambition and the enduring power of the mountain. Scattered across the high plateau of Xingquang in Laos lies a landscape that feels less like a place and more like a question. Thousands of massive stone jars, hewn from solid rock, dot the grasslands and hills in vast, enigmatic clusters. These are not delicate pots, but monumental containers, some standing over 3 meters tall and weighing several tons each. They are ancient, carved over 2,000 years ago by a culture that left no written records to explain their staggering labor. Their sheer presence is baffling, a field of silent, stone sentinels guarding a secret we can only guess at. What drove a people to carve and position these colossal vessels with such immense effort? The most widely accepted theory is a funerary one. The jars may have been used for a practice known as excarnation, where human remains were placed inside to decompose, perhaps aided by the elements, before the bones were cleaned and buried elsewhere. This would explain why some excavations have uncovered human remains, ash, and burial goods like beads and ceramics in and around the jars. They were not the final resting place, but a crucial step in a complex ritual of death and transition. Another idea suggests they were giant storage vessels, holding everything from rice to fermented alcohol, perhaps for a large, organized community or for trade caravans passing through the region. Could they have been rainwater collectors for thirsty travelers? The true purpose might be a combination of all these things, a multi-use funerary and communal site whose full meaning has been lost. Unlocking this mystery is fraught with modern danger. The Plain of Jars was heavily bombed during the Vietnam War, and the area remains littered with unexploded ordnance. This lethal legacy has severely hampered archaeological work, making large sections of the plateau inaccessible and turning every dig into a carefully managed operation. Despite these dangers, recent excavations have begun to shed light on the enigmatic people behind the jars. Researchers have discovered ancient quarries where the stone was sourced and burial pits nearby that contain not just human bones but intricate ceramic grave goods. This suggests a sophisticated society with complex beliefs about the afterlife, a culture capable of organizing the labor to carve, transport, and position these granite giants across the landscape. They were more than just jar makers. They were a people with a rich spiritual life, their entire world, you now reduced to these silent, stone questions waiting in the Laotian sun. A book so massive it was said to require a pact with the devil to complete. The Codex Giza, or the Devil's Bible, is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world, a leviathan of vellum that weighs nearly 165 pounds. Its creation was a monumental act of devotion, or perhaps desperation, containing the complete Latin Vulgate Bible, historical works by Josephus, medical texts, and a stunningly detailed, full-page illustration of the devil himself, rendered in vibrant colors, sitting alone and staring out from the parchment. The legend that clings to it is as dramatic as the book is large. It tells of a monk condemned to be walled up alive for breaking his vows, who promised to create a work that would glorify his monastery forever. To accomplish this impossible task, he pledged his soul to Satan, and with the devil's aid, he wrote the entire codex in a single, supernatural night. The historical reality is less fantastical but no less incredible. Analysis of the handwriting confirms a single scribe was responsible for the vast majority of the text, a hand that remains consistent across the hundreds of pages. This was not the work of a single night, but of an estimated 30 years of relentless, solitary labor. The ink alone, gallons of it, would have taken immense effort to produce. So why would one man dedicate his entire adult life to this single, backbreaking task? Some believe it was an act of profound penance, a self-imposed punishment for a grave sin, where the endless copying of scripture was his path to redemption. Others see it as the ultimate expression of monastic devotion, a project intended to bring immense prestige to his home monastery, making it a center of learning and a display of divine favor. It could also have been a show of sheer wealth and power, commissioned by an abbot to demonstrate the institution's resources and piety. The legend of the devil, then, becomes a folk explanation for an achievement that seemed humanly impossible. How else could one man do so much except through infernal intervention? That famous illustration of Satan is not a celebration but a warning, a depiction of the evil the monk had to overcome through his faith and his work. The Codex Giza is a paradox, a holy book forever linked to the demonic, a testament to one man's faith that spawned a legend of his ultimate damnation. It stands as a monument to the immense power of belief, and the human drive to create something so grand that its very existence becomes a story in itself. Their silent, island-wide gaze is one of the most recognizable yet misunderstood images of the ancient world. The Moai of Easter Island are not merely heads but full-body figures, most of them buried up to their shoulders by centuries of soil and erosion. These are colossal beings carved from compressed volcanic ash, with the largest of them standing over 30 feet tall and weighing a staggering 82 tons. To stand before one is to stand in the shadow of an obsession, a project that consumed an entire society for generations. The process began at a single quarry inside the volcanic crater of Roanoke, where master carvers used hand-held basalt tools to painstakingly chip the moai from the bedrock. Hundreds of these statues remain there, frozen in various stages of completion, as if the workers simply walked away one day. The truly baffling part, however, was what happened next. Once a statue was freed, it had to be transported miles across the island's rugged terrain to its final ceremonial platform, known as an ahu. How do you move an 80-ton stone giant without wheels, without draft animals, without any metal technology? The leading theory today suggests a method as ingenious as it is nerve-wracking. The islanders may have literally walked the moai to their sites. By using ropes to rock the statue from side to side, teams could coax it forward in a controlled, upright shuffle. Experiments have shown this is possible, with a surprisingly small group of people able to maneuver a multi-ton replica in this way. It would have been a slow, dangerous dance, a ceremony in itself, with the statue seeming to come alive as it moved across the land. Other ideas propose sliding the moai on log rollers or a path of lubricated sweet potatoes, but the walking theory has gained significant ground. Yet the most profound mystery is not the how but the why. Why did the Rapa Nui people pour so much of their energy, their resources, and their very identity into this escalating competition of stone? The moai were representations of powerful ancestors, believed to contain their supernatural essence or mana. Erecting larger and more impressive statues was a way for clans to showcase their status and secure divine favor. This spiritual arms race, however, came at a terrible cost. The island was once covered in a lush palm forest, but the demand for wood for rollers, ropes, and sledges, and to clear land for agriculture, led to catastrophic deforestation. Without trees, the soil eroded, crop yields fell, and the islanders could no longer build the fishing canoes needed to harvest deep-sea protein. The society that had achieved this incredible engineering feat began to fracture under the strain of famine, warfare, and a broken ecosystem. The very symbols of their power, the moai, were toppled in the ensuing conflict, so the statues stand or lie as a haunting lesson. They are monuments to human ingenuity and its potential for self-destruction, a silent testament to a civilization that reached for the sky but forgot to look at the ground beneath its feet. Deep within the crypts of an Egyptian temple lies a carving that seems to short-circuit our understanding of the past. At the Hathor Temple in Dendera, a controversial bas-relief shows a strange and captivating scene. A large, wavy snake is contained inside an elongated, bulb-shaped object which is held aloft by a pillar. A cable-like line connects this device to a box gripped by a standing figure, while a baboon-like creature sits at the base holding what appear to be knives. To modern eyes, the resemblance is startling. It looks like a giant, ancient light bulb with the snake playing the part of a glowing filament. This single image has become a cornerstone for the theory that the Egyptians possessed advanced electrical technology, knowledge that was lost for millennia. The interpretation seems almost too perfect, a depiction of a Crookes tube or some other primitive lamp, powered by a mysterious box that could be a battery, perhaps like the one found in Baghdad. The idea is undeniably compelling, suggesting a hidden chapter of scientific history. Yet, mainstream Egyptology offers a completely different and far more spiritually rooted explanation. They identify the object not as a glass bulb, but as a lotus flower, a symbol of creation in Egyptian mythology. The snake emerging from it is a representation of the primeval serpent god, Harsomptus, and the entire scene is a symbolic depiction of the moment of creation, the lotus spawning the sun god and bringing light into the universe. The pillar is the Jed, a symbol of stability, and the box is not a power source but a divine shrine. The knives held by the baboon, a creature associated with the god Thoth, could symbolize the cutting of the umbilical cord of creation. This is not a technical diagram but a profound religious allegory carved in stone. So why does the ancient technology theory fail to hold up under scrutiny? The most significant flaw is the utter lack of any corroborating evidence. No physical remnants of such light bulbs, no wires, no generators, or any other component of an electrical grid have ever been found in Egypt. The temples themselves show no soot marks from torches, but this is easily explained by the sophisticated use of reflective metal mirrors to channel sunlight into inner chambers, a proven and practical technique. Furthermore, if such a transformative technology as electric light truly existed, its impact would have been monumental, recorded in texts and influencing every aspect of life and architecture. Its complete disappearance from the historical record is simply not plausible. The Dendera light, therefore, stands as a classic example of pseudo-archaeology, where a modern interpretation is projected onto an ancient symbol, divorcing it from its true cultural and religious context. It is a Rorschach test for our own technological age, a beautiful carving that shows us not what the Egyptians knew, but what we desperately wish they had known. Their stonework is a secret kept for centuries beneath the water and earth of rural China. In 1992, a local farmer decided to pump the water out of a small, mysterious pond in Longyu County, revealing an entrance to a vast hand-carved cavern. This was not a natural cave, but the first of what would become 24 colossal artificial grottos, an underground world covering an area of over 30,000 square meters, all carved by human hands from solid sandstone. The sheer scale of the excavation is almost beyond comprehension. It is estimated that nearly 1 million cubic meters of rock were painstakingly removed to create this hidden labyrinth. This is not rough digging either. Every surface, from the soaring ceilings to the immense walls, has been meticulously finished with a consistent series of parallel chisel marks, creating a uniform, decorative pattern that runs throughout every single cavern. The builders even left behind massive pillars, strategically placed to hold up the enormous weight of the ceiling, showing a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering and long-term planning. Who could have possibly undertaken such a staggering project, and why is there not a single word about it in any historical record? The complete silence from the annals of Chinese history is as baffling as the caves themselves. Such a monumental public works project would have required the resources of an emperor, the labor of thousands of workers over many decades, and would surely have been a source of immense pride recorded for posterity. Yet no scroll, no imperial decree, no local legend even hints at their construction. This absolute void has forced archaeologists to turn to other methods like carbon dating, but the results have been frustratingly inconclusive, placing their creation anywhere from 2000 to just a few hundred years ago. The precision and immense effort involved rule out a casual endeavor, so the theories have had to become creative. Could this have been the hidden tomb complex of a forgotten emperor, a subterranean palace meant to rival those above ground? The sheer size and the careful, decorative finishing could support this idea, yet not a single artifact, burial chamber, or inscription has ever been found inside. Another possibility is that it was a massive mining operation, perhaps for a valuable mineral like pyrophyllite. But if that were the case, why the artistic, uniform markings on every wall? Miners do not decorate the walls of a quarry. The effort seems far beyond what was necessary for simple resource extraction. A more modern theory even suggests a secret military project from a much later dynasty, a hidden garrison or storage facility. But this fails to explain the complete lack of any historical memory or the ancient tool marks found within. The Longyou Caves are a true enigma of ancient engineering, a project of staggering ambition whose purpose was so well hidden that it has become completely divorced from the people who dreamed it. They stand as a hollow monument to a forgotten why, a silent, underground city waiting for a purpose it may never again reveal. The greatest conqueror in history lies in a grave that history itself cannot find. Genghis Khan united the Mongol steppes and forged an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, yet his final resting place has vanished from all records. According to the most persistent legend, his funeral procession was an exercise in absolute secrecy. The soldiers who buried the great Khan reportedly killed every witness they encountered on their journey. Then, to ensure the site would never be disturbed, they diverted a river to flow over his grave, allowing the water to erase all traces of their work. The location died with them, becoming a secret protected by the landscape itself. Finding this tomb is the ultimate archaeological prize, a discovery that could rewrite our understanding of the Mongol Empire. It is believed to hold not just the body of the emperor, but an entire court buried with him, a treasure trove of artifacts, weapons, and cultural relics from the 13th century, all untouched and perfectly preserved in the cold, dry ground. The search has centered on a sacred Mongolian mountain range called the Khentai Province, a region Genghis Khan himself revered as his spiritual homeland. Expeditions have scoured these rugged hills and river valleys for decades, following ancient texts and local oral histories. In recent years, the hunt has gone high-tech, with researchers employing satellite imagery to scan for subtle, man-made anomalies in the terrain and drones to map inaccessible gorges. They search for the ghost of a riverbed, a place where the water's path was artificially altered 800 years ago. Yet this technological quest is fraught with a profound cultural dilemma. For many Mongolians, Genghis Khan is not just a historical figure but a near-divine ancestor. Disturbing his tomb is seen as a deep spiritual violation, an act that could bring misfortune. This respect has led the Mongolian government to severely restrict excavations, prioritizing preservation over discovery. The tomb of Genghis Khan thus exists in a strange limbo, a site that could be pinpointed by science but may never be opened by human hand. It is a secret the earth has been asked to keep forever, a final victory for the emperor who conquered the world. Beneath the clear, blue waters off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island lies a site that challenges the very line between nature and human craft. The Yonaguni Monument is a massive, submerged sandstone formation, a sprawling complex of terraces, steps, and platforms that descend into the ocean depths. Its most striking features are starkly geometric, with sharp 90-degree angles, perfectly straight walls that run in parallel, and what look like carved pillars and a distinct triangular pool. It resembles the ruined plaza of a sunken city, a ghostly architecture sleeping on the seafloor. The debate over its origin is a fierce battle between two powerful forces, geology and archaeology. On one side, most geologists argue this is a spectacular natural phenomenon. The sandstone in this region is heavily fractured along parallel plains and is relentlessly sculpted by powerful tidal currents and seismic activity. These natural forces, they say, can and do create surprisingly angular formations, cleaving the rock along its innate weaknesses to produce the illusion of stairs and terraces. They point to similar, though smaller, formations on the nearby coastline that were unquestionably shaped by nature alone. The other side, however, sees a design that feels undeniably intentional. Proponents of a human origin ask how natural processes could consistently create such perfect right angles and symmetrically parallel structures across such a vast area. They highlight specific features like two tall, pillar-like rocks that appear to be positioned to support a ceiling that has long since collapsed and a trench that looks deliberately carved. The mystery deepens when we consider time. During the last ice age, sea levels were dramatically lower, and this entire structure would have been above water, perched on the coast. Could it have been a ceremonial site, a fortress, or a quarry for a lost civilization that thrived over 10,000 years ago, a culture completely erased from history by the rising seas? The enigma of Yonaguni is not about finding a clear answer, but about learning to question our own perceptions. When does a collection of random cracks become a staircase? When does a weathered rock face become a carved wall? This underwater riddle forces us to stare into the abyss of prehistory and wonder if we are seeing the hand of nature or the ghost of a human hand frozen in stone beneath the waves. A polished quartz skull can hold a reflection of our own desire to believe. Among the most captivating of all supposed ancient relics are the crystal skulls, life-sized carvings that emerged into the public eye primarily during the 19th and 20th centuries. Dealers and adventurers presented them as priceless pre-Columbian artifacts, carved by the Maya or the Aztecs with lost technologies and imbued with profound psychic powers. The most famous of these is the Mitchell Hedges skull, named for the adventurer who claimed his daughter discovered it in a Mayan ruin in Belize. It is a masterpiece of craftsmanship, carved from a single block of clear quartz with a detachable jaw that fits perfectly. For decades, it was the centerpiece of a compelling narrative, a ghost from a lost world possessing an impossible, almost supernatural perfection. The legend grew, suggesting the skulls could be used for healing, for scrying into the future, or that they held the secrets of Atlantis itself. They seemed to be artifacts that defied not just time, but the very limits of what ancient peoples were supposed to have been capable of creating. Then, science took a closer look. In the early 21st century, researchers examined the most prominent skulls, including the Mitchell Hedges example, under high-powered microscopes. What they found was definitive and disappointing. The surfaces showed the unmistakable, perfectly parallel grooves of rotary wheels and polishing tools, technology that was only available to European jewelers in the 19th century. There were no signs of hand carving with ancient stone or wooden tools. The crystal itself was from a source incompatible with Mesoamerican quarries. The verdict was inescapable. These were not ancient artifacts at all, but modern creations. The great mystery of their age was solved, yet in its place a far more human and intriguing puzzle emerged. If they are fakes, who made them and for what purpose? The most straightforward answer is profit. The 19th century was a boom time for private collectors and museums eager to acquire exotic treasures from the Americas. A skilled artisan, perhaps in Germany or France, could have carved these skulls specifically to feed this hungry market, creating a sensational object that could command a small fortune from a gullible millionaire. But is the story really that simple? Another possibility is that they were not created with malicious intent to deceive, but as objects of spiritual or artistic significance in their own right. Could they have been carved by a secretive spiritualist group fascinated by Mesoamerican cultures, intended for ritual use rather than for sale? The sheer skill required suggests a master carver, someone who would have known their work would be scrutinized. Why leave no signature, no claim of authorship? The mystery of the crystal skulls has transformed. It is no longer a question of ancient magic, but a modern whodunit, a story of anonymous artistry and motive. They stand today not as portals to Atlantis, but as mirrors reflecting our own fascination with the mysterious and our enduring capacity to weave legends from the cold, hard facts of crystal and tool marks. From the silent gaze of the Moai to the sunken geometry of Yonaguni, this journey through 25 ancient enigmas reveals a profound truth about our past. It is not a simple, linear story, but a tapestry woven with threads of lost knowledge and vanished civilizations. These puzzles underscore a humbling reality that for all our modern technology and scientific advancement, there are chapters in the human story that remain stubbornly closed, their secrets guarded by time itself. Each mystery, from the perfectly fitted stones of Sacsayhuaman to the unreadable script of the Voynich manuscript, speaks to the incredible ingenuity of our ancestors and to the heartbreaking fragility of their achievements. Entire worlds of understanding, like the engineering principles behind the Antikythera mechanism, can simply disappear, leaving behind only whispers and questions. This relentless human curiosity is what connects us across the centuries. It is the same drive that pushed the builders of Karnak to arrange thousands of stones, and that compels us today to scan the desert sands for a lost army or the ocean floor for a legendary city. We are bound by a shared desire to find answers, to pull back the curtain on the unknown and understand our place in this long, mysterious narrative. So we turn this final question over to you. After this incredible journey, which of these 25 ancient mysteries captures your imagination most completely? Does the fate of the Roanoke colonists haunt your thoughts, or does the purpose of the Plain of Jars dominate your curiosity? Share your own theories and thoughts in the comments below, and if you are hungry for more explorations into history's greatest secrets, be sure to subscribe. The past is filled with countless more stories waiting to be uncovered, and the next great discovery is always just one